Hello and welcome back to another Cat Fantasy video. Today we will be going over the patch 1.8 update. Uh, Whereas the little Valentine's Day update that we got 2 weeks ago was a relatively small patch, we are back to the big patches yet again, similar to the Savannah Fata patch and the uh, Afros patch, right? We're looking at a fairly comprehensive 4 week update. We have a total of 5 new combatants to go over in this patch. 3 of them are currently available. We have 2 normal raid up units in Delilah and Garfire, and then we actually have a Luminox banner in Minotara. This is the first time that we have had Luminox since Arena. Ever since then, um, we had Spotlight Dash for the light dark characters, uh, which meant that you were able to get pulls for free from the event and so on and so forth. And Minotaur Spotlight Powder was in the game's client, as of 2 weeks ago. But I guess they decided to change things up last minute, so now Minotaur is available. So I'm not really gonna go over event content or anything too much because honestly, they didn't really add a lot in terms of events. It's kind of like they added, they got to floor. We're up to floor 900 in the training hub, but those floors that were added are bugged as of the patch. So, and Nightmare's Call isn't updating until tomorrow. So and there's an event, but the event boss isn't yet available. So today I'm primarily going to be going over the combatants because there's a lot to go over. Like I said, there's 3 combatants currently available. Um, there's 2 combatants that we know are going to be available within the duration of the patch. A new battle pass, since the Rafaela battle pass is still going for another week, right? And then another banner that I would expect to hit the game in 2 weeks. So another, regular red Pathite banner. And then in addition, since we have the Luminox banner, as opposed to the Spotlight Dash, this means that you also have the opportunity to not just purchase Minotara from the Luminox exchange, but also any prior or a lot of prior limited units, and you can also get Arena. Fun fact. So yeah, this is probably going to be a lengthier video. So let's go ahead and briefly go over our combatants here. So I guess what I'll go over first is Delilah, and we'll kind of go over Delilah and Garfire together because they are the same bundle and they are pretty much only played on the same team, right? So Delilah and Garfire kind of introduce a new damage type into the game. This is called amplifying damage. Um, what this does is it causes your ability to deal 20% more damage for each buff stack that is applied on that unit up to 10 stacks, right? So how Dire can deal 2.5 times additional damage, amplifying damage at 10 stacks is 200% more damage or 300% damage. So the ceiling here is potentially higher. We'll kind of go over Delilah's and Garfire's kits in tandem. Kind of, would I recommend pulling them? What builds, what teams, etc., etc., etc. Right. So Delilah, passive, pretty simple. Just gives all green Pathos allies crit rate. Skill 1, deals damage and gives her 1 stack of Breakthrough for 4 turns. Breakthrough is a self buff that increases her amplifying damage dealt by 3%, thus giving her another damage multiplier. Also, obviously, this is a buff stack, so this is going to count towards that amplifying damage quota, right? And then her other skill is just amplifying damage, and then her ult is also just amplifying damage with an additional little quest. If you have 10 or more buff stacks, the skill will gain an additional 20% crit damage, right? and then we'll quickly go over the star up effects as well. So 1 star, this other skill, this one right here, the amplifying damage skill now also grants a stack of breakthrough before the skill is used. At 4 stacks or at 4 stars, if allies have a total of 10 or more stacks of buffs, she gives herself a self attack buff, which means that she is getting another buff stack from her 4 star, right? And then her 6 star, the crit damage when you get the 10 plus buffs quest on her ultimate is increased from 20 to 40%. And instead of just applying for that instance of battle, this 40% crit damage is applied permanently as a permanent buff for the remainder of battle. It does count as a buff stack. However, it does not stack upon itself. So if you Delilah ult twice, you're not getting 80% crit damage. You're just retaining the 40, right? Unfortunately, I did go ahead and verify that through testing. Before we go over the should you pull for this, let's also go over Garfire, because like I said, they're kind of bundled together on the same team. Her passive is just going to give Green Pathos allies attack based on the number of buff stacks they have up to 4 times. Her skill 1 does honestly very weak AoE damage. This is not a skill card for damage. What this is a skill card for is to apply this Dark Thunder. Now, what's important to note with Dark Thunder is considered a neutral. It is not considered a debuff, so you cannot use it to proc Dire, which is unfortunate. But after attacking a target with the Dark Thunder, whoever attacks it gains Breakthrough, and then the Dark Thunder lasts for 1 turn. Obviously, we know what Breakthrough is because of Delilah. And then her ultimate is just amplifying damage. The same motion value as Delilah ultimate, as a matter of fact. Let's take a look at her star up effects. 1 star, so her basic card just deals typeless damage. But with 1 star, her skill 2 converts the damage type to amplifying, so it actually does do damage as long as you can also buff stack the Garfire. So the duration of Dark Thunder is increased by 1 turn at 4 stars, which means you have 2 turns from 1 card to stack your breakthrough as opposed to 1. And then her ult, or their 6 star, when you ult, before you ult, right, for the purpose of damage calculation, you give everybody 1 stack of breakthrough. Okay, cool. So, Delilah and Garfire, should you pull? I really can't recommend it. So in terms of unit strength, like the team is perfectly fine, right? Delilah feels quite strong. Garfire individually isn't as strong, but her contribution to the team through Dark Thunder is definitely something that's notable. The main issue with recommending pulling for these units is this ends up being a green single target team. This is a green single target team in a game where most players have Asura, combat mode Shiro, or both. So this kind of creates a bit of redundancy because you don't actually need more single target options unless it's like insane power creep. Is it power creep over Asura Shiro? No, not really. It's actually more or less the same. Like maybe its ceiling's slightly higher when you wail for Delilah and Garfire, but again, you can just kind of get Asura stars from playing the game. So, like a free to play might have 5-star Asura and might only be able to 1-star a limited character. In this case, of course, Asura is going to be the best thing you can play for green. So generally, I wouldn't recommend pulling for Delilah unless I guess you're missing Asura Shiro and you just really want like a green single target team, or if you're a whale, then I mean, hey, you're gonna pull anything anyways, right? Let's not beat around the bush there. As far as equipment build, it's just crit. It's just crit. They don't have special scaling off of pen or anything. It's just crit. Both Delilah and Garfire, they just want crit. As far as team compositions go, you are going to be generally looking at obviously, you're going to get Delilah and Garfire in there, right? As far as other team options, so the third slot, Shiro can be a decent one here, especially if your Garfire is not really started up, isn't really contributing damage. Shiro can act as your second DPS. The great thing about Delilah and Garfire is that they're both Trinity, which means that you're really benefiting off of Shiro's passive. If you don't have a 4-star plus Shiro and you need all the Trinity to even get the effect, you could then run a sustain like Triss or Anya in this slot, right? And then that's kind of a team that you can kind of go with. Now, alternatively, if your Garfire is starting to contribute some damage, Shiro could start to fall off in retrospect just because you're not really getting great vulnerability uptime. And again, Dark Thunder doesn't count as a debuff. Then, well, you could consider running something like Viola in that third slot, right? And then the fourth slot I'd always recommend here is going to be Arena, or again, like Arena for, more like passive buffing, great synergy with Viola. Or alternatively, if you want to use Arena on another team because you're in like Nightmare's Call or Clan Battle, you can just go with a very standard Sage. You can also go Triss if you need the spell, but generally Sage is going to be the option. This will very likely change in 2 weeks, and I'll kind of go over that a little bit when we get to that point of going over that character. Um, but yeah, another option here. Let's say you can pull Delilah but not Garfire. Are you screwed? Well, no, not really, because there actually is another unit that can help Delilah stack her breakthrough faster, and that unit is Fata. So if you don't have Garfire, you can't get Garfire. You don't want to get Garfire, right? But you have a Fata lying around because you invested in that bundle. You can just put Fata here instead. You would lose out on damage because, Garfire passive, resonance, all that stuff. But Fata is a very good alternative. Generally, I would start to not recommend Shiro in this scenario as you're losing too much Trinity. Um, so possible pairings here. You could either run Viola, but again, this is going to be very aggressively funnel. It might be relying on a bit of RNG. But again, Viola, especially at 5 stars, really good at helping push those Delilah buff stacks, especially early on. But if you wanted to run a second DPS, I mean, you could just fling an Asura in there, right? No big deal. Asura can just generally fit anywhere. And then fourth slot, again, is just going to be kind of the same Arena or Triss options. Sage, of I guess you really need survivability, right? Um, but generally, yeah. So I mean, you don't need like if you were to go for this team, obviously I pulled Delilah first. Then I'd look into Garfire. Then I'd look into 1-star Delilah. And then I would just kind of star up Delilah from there. And then if you want to whale and like super vertical the team, then you could also put stars into Garfire. As far as star up breakpoints, all of the Lilas are pretty great. Her 1-star makes her self insight, or sorry, not insight, her self breakthrough stacking a lot more reliant. Her 4-star gives her more buff stacks to work with, helps you hit that 10 stack quota a lot easier, and her 6-star does give you permanent crit damage, which is very nice. As far as Garfire's star up effects, her 1-star gives her some personal damage. Her 4-star is very good because it gives you more uptime on Dark Lightning, less reliant on RNG of pulling more Dark Lightning cards to get those initial breakthrough stacks going. And then 6 stars is less good, but if you're whaling, you're whaling, right? Okay, perfect. So now let's go over the next character. So this is the Luminox summon. So this is Minotara. This is the most recent light dark unit in the game. She is a Black Pathos single target DPS. Her kit is very complicated. So I think the best way to kind of explain this is going to be to actually head into the training hub and kind of show what her kit is. Because it's going to be nearly impossible to explain it, right? Okay, so Minotaura, right? First of all, her passive. She gives herself a self crit rate buff of 10%, goes up to 19 at 6 stars. This is already really nice. At the start of battle, you enter the Abyssal Depths state. This is just her non-ult form. So basically, TLDR, she gets crit rate, and then when she isn't in her ultimate stance, and I'll show that here physically in a bit, she will get an additional SP for each card that she activates. So as you can see, I have 3 SP right now. So if I get an extra XP when I activate a card, I should be at full SP if I just activate one card. So let's go ahead and go over her skill 1 very quickly in the base form, right? So this just deals damage to one enemy and gives her crit damage for 3 turns. So let's go ahead and activate that. We'll just pass for the rest of the turn. Cool. So now we have the buff, and you see that we have 5 SP. So let's talk about her ultimate, right? So when you activate Minotaur's ultimate, you devour a card. I don't know why it doesn't say. Oh, it says devour as a keyword. But yeah, you devour a card to activate it, and you enter what's called the Demon Lord state. And your SP bar changes. Your SP cap is 4, and instead of gaining 1 SP for casting abilities, you lose 1 SP for casting abilities. She gets damage bonus based on how much crit rate she has, up to 100% bonus damage for 100% crit rate. And then when her SP hits 0, she does a giant nuke that deals sunder damage to the enemy. So activate the ultimate, right? Devour, and you see she's enhanced. She gains a demon form. You see her SP bar is now red, and she has 4 SP. So now each time we activate a card, we are going to get an additional effect. So let's go over her skill B. This is Plow of Agony. So again, without her ult, it's just typeless damage. That's literally it. Now, in her ult, that damage becomes Sunder damage. And for each SP this combatant has, the base damage gets increased by 10%. So let's go ahead and just, hit it with a few cards here. Yeah, and as you can see, it's doing absolutely ridiculous damage for Minotaura being basically unbuffed. So now we have her second skill card. So again, this is a card that buffed her crit damage by 20% in base form. In ult form, what this does is this deals sunder damage to one enemy, and then it does 50% of that damage to all other enemies. It is an AoE sunder ability. So, let's go ahead and activate a few more cards here, right? So there's that ability. Does less damage, but again, it does AoE. So if you're fighting 3 or 5 targets, it's going to do way more. And as you can see, we've activated 3 cards. We're down to 1 SP, right? So let's just activate 1 more card, see what happens when we drop to 0. So we're going to go ahead and attack it, and then our ultimate is actually going to activate, right? It's going to play the whole cutscene, and the enemy is going to get nuked, and we are going to go back to the non-ult form. So again, we'll just be gaining 1 additional SP for each card that we activate, blah, 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 blah. That's essentially how it works. You get bonus SP when activating cards. You activate your ult, your SP bar turns red. You get 4 SP, and you lose 1 SP each time you use a card, so you get to cast 4 empowered cards. The ult doesn't have a duration, it just ends when you use 4 empowered cards. But when the duration ends, you get a giant nuke, and then you go back to the regular form, right? That's basically how her kit works. It's very complicated to read, but it's not too complicated to play. And then we'll briefly take a look at her star up effects here. So 1 star after the Demon Lord state, that's her ult form, ends. She gets an additional SP. That's why I had 1 SP after her ult ended for my Minotaura, because I have her 1 star effect activated. 4 stars. At the start of battles, gain 2 SP. Before using skills, gain a 5% attack increase, stacking up to 4 times. So obviously, right, that's why I had 3 SP at the start of combat as well, because I had her 4 star effect activated. Normally you would start battle with 1 SP as usual, right? And then at that point you would and then at that point you would have to activate 2 cards in order to get her ultimate as opposed to 1. And then her 6-star effect. When this combatant's HP is above 75%, deal 25% more damage. When her HP is below 50%, take 20% less damage. So now the grand question of the day: should you pull Minotaura? Yes, absolutely yes. It's not even a question. Uh, Minotaura, at least talking in terms of PvE here, is the current strongest on older servers. She's still one of the strongest DPS options in the entire game. She makes an absolute joke out of Black Tea, Asura, Shiro, and all those usual ones. The only DPS in this game that comes close to Minotaura in terms of raw power is Jin Kuei, right? This is by far the best DPS option that we have in the game and that we are going to have in the game for a while. She is 100% worth your pulls, although obviously be cautious because Luminox banners are expensive. We're not getting, free pulls this time around because it's not Spotlight Dash. So obviously, I mean, you can clear the content without her. Don't spend more than you are able to or anything silly like that. If you do have the resources to pull and you're like, I want to pull a character, should I pull this character? Yes, please pull this character. She is absolutely absurd. She does ridiculous damage. She's ridiculously tanky because of her Pathos color, and this gets especially apparent with her 6-star effect. She makes content an absolute joke. She's pretty much going to be a requirement if you want to rank high in anything PvE related, such as Nightmare's Call, event bosses, or clan campaign. She is an absolute menace. You should definitely pull for her, and you should pull for her. You should set her at a higher priority than any other character that I go over in this video. Minotaura is also extremely flexible in regards to how you can build her teams, right? So let's go over that, right? So I almost had the correct lineup here for the first team. I was just kind of rushing into it so I could show the abilities. This is the first comp I would consider. This is pretty much full funnel Minotaura. This comp is going to look very familiar if you've built Triss or Selena. It's just Viola, Vanilla to funnel cards and buff, and then Arena. One consideration here is I would definitely cut Vanilla to run Stacy if we are doing clan campaigns specifically. Funnel is quite good because another thing that Minotaura's ultimate does is it funnels herself a skill card, so she usually just has enough cards to be able to kind of solo DPS without having you run out of steam. Now there are other options for teams that Minotaura can be played on that I would recommend. The first one is going to be a kind of green variant for single target. This allows you to run a second DPS. This would be Asura. Asura has a great pairing here because she provides vulnerability, which can just cause Minotaura to deal even more damage. Additionally, Asura can gain buffs from, in a pinch. Let's say like you just have Asura cards, you're trying to like unload a lot of Asura cards. You can use Viola's buff card on Asura in a pinch. She still does Sunder damage, and then of course the Arena is benefiting them both by buffing both of their crit rate and crit damage. Right. Another option I would consider is this is going to be more for 3 to 5 targets, but I think that Ren has fantastic synergy with Minotaura as well. Ren has Hellfire. This is going to allow Minotaura to do absolutely ridiculous things, especially if she uses her skill A, the AoE Sunder card on the enemies with Hellfire. You can combine this with a spread Kato, such as Imp, or, which one's the spread one? Or Scholar Pair, right? And you can just do some ridiculous spread setups with that. But yeah, Minotaura, Ren, Arena. Fourth slot could be anything. It could be Viola, it could be Vanilla, it could be Stacy. I'm just gonna put Viola here because it's just a super generic, like, good option to default to. Also, Ren can debuff by reducing the defense of an enemy, and she provides plus 14%, or 14 to 21, I believe, crit damage to all Trinity members of the team. And Minotaura is conveniently enough Trinity, so it's actually quite a good synergy. Especially for 3 to 5 targets, when you can really make use out of that Hellfire, it becomes very potent. Obviously, you can just kind of slot Minotaura in any team because she's that broken, but those are just some recommendations to provide you with kind of a starting point here. As far as star up breakpoints, Minotaura is already going to be absolutely ridiculous at 0 stars out of the box, just one copy. Obviously, if you want to go deeper because you want a vertical in a Minotaura, I do think again all of her star up breakpoints are going to be very good. Her 1 star less so, but it still makes it so after ulting, you only need to activate 2 cards to get her ult back as opposed to 3, so it's still quite useful. Her 4 star plus 2 SP and an attack bonus. The attack bonus is whatever, but the plus 2 SP definitely is not. You can hold that second card to use it in its enhanced state instead of having to use it to give her SP. And then her 6 star is obviously very good because it just gives her damage percent. I don't know if it's final damage or not, but I would imagine it's a noticeable increase nonetheless. So pretty much whatever breakpoint suits you, whatever you have the means to do. If you want a vertical Minotaur, I definitely think it's a good idea, right? She's definitely very good. Another thing to consider, we have the Illuminox shop currently available because, like I said, Minotaura is Illuminox banner. So obviously you can get Minotaura. Arena has reran here. Very solid unit. And then we have a lot of reruns of limited units. Pretty much every unit up to like Aphros, Eleanor, Sage is available to be acquired here. So if unfortunately we don't have any collab characters, so no Nekopara, no Food Fantasy even. Those are excluded. Even though the Food Fantasy was included for China, it was not included for us, so still not able to get those black teas. So besides Minotaur, is there anything else to really bring up here? Anything noteworthy? I still do think Arena is one of the strongest options in the game for PvE and PvP. If you are missing for PvE, the ideal breakpoint is 1 star, so she can shield everybody. For PvP, it's more of a whale toy because the ideal breakpoint is 6 stars for her immortality. Now, if you don't have those breakpoints yet for those respective modes and you would like to get them, you definitely can. I would still generally prioritize getting a copy of Minotaura, but Arena is not bad here. As far as other units, I would advise from this exhaustive list, the only ones I would really, really, really look at here, I think Aphros is quite useful to get at least a copy of. And I do think Ren is very useful as well, because, again, of her synergy with Minotaura and just her setups in general with other AoE DPSs such as Marlena, right? Definitely think these two are worth considering, additionally compared to the other options. And then Arena is obviously going to be very good as well. I would not look at the other ones as much unless you're looking for something very specific for your account, right? Okay, we're almost done. So, I'm just going to briefly touch on 2 new characters that have appeared in the gallery. So first we have the new Battle Pass. This is expected to hit next week because the Rafaela Battle Pass ends next week, right? This unit is Lily. So Lily is a potential sustain option for Delilah teams. She's basically a healer that can provide buff stacks that aren't great by themselves. Like they give defense, they give endurance, for example. But they do contribute buff stacks. And her heals can crit. Her heals can overheal and convert into a shield, just like Viola. So she is quite good at being a sustain. Would I say that she's best in slot on Delilah teams and she's worth, specifically spending Corzon to go after? Probably not, because there's another green sustain that's coming and she's just going to be better. And we will go over that as well. So the other unit here is Mandy. I'm going to assume that this character is going to be coming in 2 weeks because the Nightmares Pass resets in 2 weeks, which means the next Nightmares Call reset is going to be 2 weeks from now. Manny was a character that was available in every other server and every other region except for global. Looks like they're going to push her in during this window for global. So Mandy is a green Pathos shielder. She's Trinity, which is important to consider for Shiro. And basically, she has 2 turn shields for the whole team, just like just like Anya. She has an AoE attack debuff, just like Arena, which gives her synergy with Aphros. Her ultimate's a single target fear, which is whatever. But her passive buffs the final damage of all Green Pathos allies, which makes her an absolutely insane passive buffer to min-max your green teams. I wouldn't say Mandy is a mandatory pull, but Mandy is very, very good. She's arguably best in slot sustain for green. Um, so, you can definitely consider pulling her. She works at 1 copy. I know a lot of people are going to be spent after Minotaura, so there's probably not going to be a lot of people that pull for Mandy, but Mandy is just generally very good. I may go over that in another video in 2 weeks if I consider it something that needs to be gone over more in depth, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, she'll be a regular red Pathite banner, right? And then to accompany that, she's also gonna have a skin, a Pathos thread skin, just like the Lilas. One last thing. This is an existing combatant, but you are able to get cores for Poppy Luminous Star now. Before, you were not able to acquire these cores, right? But now you can get them. And so effectively, Poppy was only available at 0 stars. And that's if you were able to do the login event to get her, right? Which was towards the launch of the game. So now you can get her to 6 stars, and you can kind of benefit from her 6-star effect. So I guess this isn't a should you pull, but this is a should you purchase her cores. I would generally say no. The thing is, Poppy was a great unit when she initially released. She would have benefited a lot more from having her star up effects back then. Nowadays, yeah, unfortunately, it's just she's just power crept. Like ever since we've gotten access to units like Halloween Manami, Aphros, like it just becomes largely redundant to play her. Like yeah, oh she has spread, That's literally her whole kit. We have Ren, who's better spread, and then like this card, it does no damage, and then an attack buff is laughable, right? Her kit is just so outdated at this point. Like she was definitely designed to be used towards the release of the game. Now at this point, with the expansive roster of characters that we currently have available, right? Um, it becomes super duper redundant to play a character like Poppy. So I would not recommend it. Like I said, I'm not really going to go over any of the events because there's not really any events going on right now. Like you can do the event story. I've heard it's great. But yeah, that's pretty much all we're going to be going over in terms of combatants. I may do a video in 2 weeks going over Mandy and Lily a bit more in depth if there's, if it needs to be, scrutinized a bit more, or I need to provide some additional context, then, I'll go ahead and do that. Otherwise, that's going to be it for the patch 1.8 update. Thank you so much. Make sure to like and leave a comment if you like what you've been watching. Definitely lets me know to continue doing stuff like this. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.